Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything, and welcome back to the first ever Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush episode review, the first of, I'm sure, many on this channel. The first episode of the 8th Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush, aired just under 24 hours ago. Big thank you to the sub team for getting the subs up as quickly as they did. I just finished watching the first episode, and I will be giving my full thoughts on that first episode, and hopefully you guys will be doing the same down below. Let me know if you plan on continuing this show, first impressions, if you weren't a fan, if you were a fan, everything you have to say down below. Generally speaking, I thought this was actually a really enjoyable episode 1, which is actually in contrast to episode 1 of Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s. I've often said that I think the first episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s is maybe the weakest episode 1 of any Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, and I ended up really enjoying Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s quite a bit, think it has a very strong finish, but the beginning arc up until maybe like episode 9, episode 10, when Roa was introduced, was very okay, and that first episode, not a big fan of, even though, of course, it did set up a lot of things. But this episode of Go Rush was really, to me, a tutorial episode done perfectly. And we got a few words from the director of Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush before the show started, and he said, you know, we still want to appeal to new people who maybe did not watch 7s and aren't familiar with Rush Duels, while still being able to appeal to the market that did watch 7s and already are maybe experts in Rush Duels. And this episode encapsulated that perfectly. The director went on to say, the reason we picked an alien protagonist was because it would make sense for the characters of Earth to have to explain the rules of Rush Duels to him from a story perspective and to the audience, and that is something that this episode did in such an entertaining way. And the blend of personalities between the Odo twins, Yuhi and Yuumu, and our main protagonist, Udius, is fantastic. Udius is serious. He's bursting with personality. He really is. He's a little more serious than maybe your recent protagonist in Yuga, but he's also very just dumb, but dumb because he doesn't understand Rush Duels and he doesn't understand the Earth traditions. Like when Yuhi cut open the pack, seeing his reaction to that had me bursting out laughing because he thought the packs were the actual Rush Duel cards, even though they're just the packs. And so Yuhi is kind of the real goofy clown of the three, and his twin sister Yuumu is just deadpan, a little cunning, right? A little on the maybe conniving side, if you will, where she has ideas and ambitions of her own, and she's trying to maybe manipulate things in certain ways for the better of UTS, which is the company that she owns, and for the betterment of maybe herself. Although I didn't really get any malicious vibes from her. I got more of those cunning personality vibes, which I definitely appreciate. And even seeing Yuumu just act so calm while her twin brother was having a complete meltdown at the thought of being in front of a real alien, I thought that was a great contrast even between the twins. And then you throw Udius's personality into it, where he is this clearly respected individual from Velgears, right? He's got 8.8 million countrymen chanting his name when he draws a freaking card. So he's obviously this incredibly well-respected general, if you will, from Velgears, who wants to act seriously and like a leader, but in doing so, he's like so trying to be serious to the point that it's hilarious, because he's being serious over things like, you know, trying to kill Yuhi for helping him open a pack of Rush Duel cards. He's trying to, like, imprison Yuhi for drawing multiple cards at once, even though that's the main purpose of Rush Duel. I thought, again, that was a very creative way to show off that you can draw multiple cards in a Rush Duel until your hand is 5. And there was just a very creative aspect from this episode of how to present a tutorial duel, and that is something that I thought they did perfectly. But outside of that, man, the personalities were really, really good, and the characters, the main three, were really, really good. And we get a little bit of world building in this episode The last name Odo was not thrown around at all. You know, a big theory of mine, a big theory of a lot of people is that Yuga went to Velgear at the end of Sevens, and then you have the 2-year time skip, and he comes back to Earth, and then the show ends. You know, Yuhi and Yuumu have the Odo last name, but that, of course, was not mentioned in this episode. So there are still a good amount of mysteries. What's the connection to Sevens? Where does this fall on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens timeline? At the very end, when they're back in the office, we see 3 characters that are peeking in, I think in awe that UTS has actually captured an alien, and one of those characters is clearly an older version of Galliant from the Machine Cavalry Club. So even if you haven't been paying attention to any of the spoiler or summary information regarding this show, if you watched a little bit of Sevens, you look at Galliant and say, okay, well, there's an older version of him, so this show has to be connected. In the episode 2 preview, we see older versions of, I think, Django. We see an older version of Geta. So there's little hints there that probably, again, further confirm this show is somewhere in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens timeline. But I really liked the little bit of world building that they did. Udius talking about the war and how a legend, and I thought this was kind of interesting, maybe a little theory here. Remember, Yu-Gi-Oh! 7 started with a legend of how to become the king of games, and that was seen out by Yuga in the final episode when he essentially sacrificed himself to save the world. In this episode, the first episode of Go Rush, Udius talks about another legend. He talks about a legend that Rush Duels will save his galaxy and will stop the war going on in his cluster. Now, I don't know how that's going to happen, and it's hilarious because even Yuhi and Yuumu are like, okay, how are Rush Duels going to stop a war? And Udius is just like, yeah, I don't really know, which I think is hilarious because we as the audience are like, you know, of course it's Yu-Gi-Oh! And everything is solved with dueling in this franchise, but like, come on, there's a full-fledged war. There's got to be some deeper meaning to Rush Duels. And how did the legend of Rush Duels reach another galaxy? Did Yuga preach it in those 2 years? We know Luke Man can kind of go galaxy to galaxy. Did Luke Man end up on Velgears and talk about Rush Dueling? Very interested to know more about where that origin and where the legend, the origin of that legend started. But I love the side-by-side comparison there. Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's starts with an urban legend about the king of games. That obviously king of duels, excuse me. That obviously becomes insanely important in the show. Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush starts about the legend of Rush Duels saving the Velgear Star Cluster, and I'm sure that is going to be incredibly important as this show progresses. The duel was really cool. They presented Udius's ace, which is a level 4, or one of his aces, a level 4 1600 attack point monster, Transamu Rainik, which, by the way, is one of my favorite designed protagonist aces. I absolutely love it, especially after Seven's Road Magician, which I was not a big fan of. I love the way Transamu Rainik looks, and I didn't really know how they were going to be able to strongly present a 1600 vanilla attack monster, and they somehow did. I mean, I felt like the duel, for being a tutorial duel, again, was done almost perfectly. They presented it by Yuhi saying, well, there's no cards over 1500 attack. That is not a tribute. So I'm assuming he's hinting that his face downs would have prevented a tribute summon, and they probably would have prevented a monster from gaining any attack point boost, because he said even if he tries to raise the attack of a 1500 or less monster, I'll be able to stop that. They don't show his face downs, but it's heavily implied. And so Udius busts out his ace, which is the first vanilla level 4 monster to have more than 1500 attack. I know Vorse Raider is 1900, but Vorse Raider is a legend card, so the first non-legend, I should say, in Rush Duels to have 1600 attack. I know in the main game it's not impressive, but in Rush Duel, that is very strong for a non-tribute monster. And so Udius summons it. He says it resembles him. Can kind of see it, but I also kind of agree with Yuumu and Yuhi, where I don't really see the resemblance all that much. The color scheme is pretty similar, but the facial structure doesn't look that similar. And I love the sword shot of Yugioh as he's slashing Yuhi's monster with Transamu Reinic's attack. And he defeats Yuhi in his first ever rush duel, but of course he agrees to join the twins at UTS to help them in their quest to capture aliens, because he wants to learn more about rush dueling, the same rush dueling that he believes can bring an end to the war on his planet. No Yugioh in this episode. We know Yugioh was his commanding officer on Velgear, disappeared, and is going to end up on Earth as well, so I could definitely see a rival vibe there, and I'm very excited to see Yugioh's debut. We know next week he's going to be dueling Manabu. There's a shot in the preview. Is this Gakuto? What do you guys think? Or is it Manabu dressing up as Gakuto for a little bit of an Easter egg? Again, what is Manabu's relationship to Gakuto? Who really knows? But I have a feeling next week we could get more answers to the question of where does this exactly fall in relation to Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's. But episode 1, I thought it was a very good episode. This is the most fun I've had watching a first episode of a Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime in quite some time. The personality of Yugioh was great, and merely the dynamic between Yugioh, who is a bit of a goof because he just doesn't understand human and Earth traditions, Yuhi, who is a complete goofball, but a very lovable one, and Yuumu, who is complete deadpan, serious, and also a little cunning, which I can definitely appreciate. And I think the three of them working together is going to be really enjoyable to watch. And I know Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's had your main four. I could see Manabu Sogetsu maybe becoming that fourth based on how episode 2 plays out. So we'll keep an eye on that. And of course, the cat in the beginning of this episode, I think belongs to Manabu. And they were hunting, catnapping aliens. So I guess they already have evidence that there might be aliens here already, which is pretty interesting. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But guys, let me know your thoughts on the very first episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush. I really enjoyed it. I am very, very excited for episode 2. And I'm very excited for the opening, which this is the first ever Yu-Gi-Oh! That the opening is not shown to us in the first episode, right? That's never happened before in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. There are some anime that I've watched where they didn't do that. I know Black Clover does not have their opening in the first episode. I know that because I only watched the first episode and then I never followed through with the show. And I remember the opening not being in that episode. So I'm no anime have done it before. It's never happened with a Yu-Gi-Oh! I haven't watched the ending yet. I'm going to react to that when opening 1 comes out, which I assume will be next week. Hopefully we'll get some cool shots in there. And I have a feeling we're going to get shots of maybe a couple of 7's characters aged up. Maybe a Yuga, maybe an Otis. It'll be interesting to see. But let me know all your thoughts on episode 1. Super excited to talk to you down below in the comment section. A special thank you to my Platinum tier patrons, Panther J, Blue Maiden 28, Jarrett Buller, Lee Saxophone Beast, and Frost Eagle, and to my Diamond tier patrons, Jesse Wood, Latrell Smith, and Erick Avila, and to my Egyptian God tier patrons, Ccapacappuuu and Syn Cloud. Thank you so much to everyone who supports me over on Patreon or who is a YouTube channel member. You guys help me out and you help out the channel so much. And be sure to check out my Patreon for some channel exclusive perks. Thank you guys so much for watching. I stream on Twitch, I'm on Twitter, and I'm on Instagram. Links for all those will be in the description. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day. Take care, guys.